Hello, and welcome back to episode 126 of the Guardian Project podcast. I'm your host, Andy, and in a few weeks, I'll be throwing an annual gingerbread cookie party. Coyle, you're invited.
Oh, thanks.
By invitation only.
Oh, of course.
But I did send you the invite.
I did. I got it. And I've probably put tentative on there because I'm a terrible human being.
Coyle replies and RSVPs to everything as like, maybe.
Yeah.
When we know he will be there.
I'm going to be there. Yeah. I'm just afraid that Gingerbread's going to be running out of your house at that point. And I'm your other host, Mike. And so I heard Olivia and Edgar's marriage is not going so great. They always seem to be at each other's throats.
Oh, that was a good one.
That's 2 vampire jokes in a row. Sorry, everybody out there.
And this is the podcast where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering.
But mostly Commander.
Couple of announcements this week. The main update is that we are seeing some changes to cards that are now on the list, and there's some relevant cards that were added here. The first is Jet Medallion.
That's hot.
An artifact that says black spells you cast cost 1 less.
Yeah, in fact, I see a theme going on here with a lot of these cards that we're looking at. They all seem to be black.
Vampiric Tutor. Very good.
That's really, really good.
One black mana, you're going to tutor for any card and put it on top of your library.
And you only got to lose 2 life to do it. And Exquisite Blood, a huge combo piece with Sanguine Bond and everything.
An enchantment that says whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. Right now, it's a $33 card.
Huge. And we know that the list printing isn't enough to really bring the price down significantly. So if you open one, awesome. And then Twilight Prophet.
Which is also $33.
Great. We talked about this.
We did when we knew pirates. We knew vampires were
Mm-hmm.
coming back. We knew we were going to see we were going to see a spike to all of them
for sure. But I really like the way that they are adding cards to the list and stuff. There's even some things like Assault Formation and stuff that cares about toughness, because we know toughness matters is a theme in here. So I like that the list is producing cards that you don't open a set booster to draft, and you're not going to play with those cards in standard. But for us, the Commander players,
and I hope you all open a Day's Undoing to experience that. That's fun.
Gotta do it.
I hope none of you open Brian Lynn the Moonkraken though, because that's disappointing. Maybe for being on the list.
Well, you get a Brian Lynn with a nice little Planeswalker logo in the bottom left-hand corner.
I guess Carador Ghost Chieftain's on here.
It's pretty cool.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, so a lot of like graveyard themed stuff, zombie, vampire, and then again, there is a Toughness Matters theme that's going on in that list too.
There is. So if you want to check out all the cards that have been added to the list, we'll have that in a link in the show notes below. And if you would like to find us and support us on Patreon, you could head to patreon.com/GuardianProjectPod and donate for any dollar amount.
And if you're looking for another way to support the podcast, whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on now, if you could subscribe, rate, review, and leave comments, we'd be most appreciative.
You can find us online at theguardianprojectpodcast.com. You can find our social media on Twitter at GuardianPod, our gameplay videos at youtube.com/GuardianProject, and you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com. What's on the agenda this week, Coyle?
This week, since we have now had the entire set of Innistrad Crimson Vow spoiled, we are going to talk about some of the cards that we are looking to put into Commander decks ourselves, as well as the returning, does this card belong in Noyandar? Does this card belong in She-Ray? And we're even going to talk about some commanders that we're looking forward to building from this. And we're talking about the standard set.
The standard set, and it is a wedding-based set. That's the whole theme.
For sure.
So in that spirit, we vow to you to make this a good episode.
Whenever you're ready, you can start the music and just re-go.
Okay. Innistrad, we're here again, and we've got some new mechanics and some returning mechanics. Our first new mechanic is Cleave, which is an alternate cost that allows you to remove some of the rules text. Specifically, there's a card here, Alchemist Gambit. I like this one. It's an extra turn spell. It says take an extra turn. During that turn, damage can't be prevented. And then it has some words in brackets. It says at the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. But if you pay the cleave cost, you can remove that section.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting an additional effect by paying a different cost. It feels like Kicker. It feels like Overload.
Yep, definitely.
It's just being done in a different way. I like it. I've got a card on my list here that is going to use this mechanic. I wish it was Overload.
Sure. And a lot of times, the one I think...
The mechanic isn't set up that way to negatively affect all things.
Right. I do like the way that it's set up, and some people actually find it as a downside because it fits less of their commander decks. But a lot of times the cleave cost has an additional color compared to the actual face card of the commander. So I like that. A lot of people don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
We also have returning themes of vampires, werewolves, spirits, humans, and zombies here in Innistrad Crimson Vow. And the vampires themselves actually bring a brand new token to the party, and that is a blood token. So blood tokens are an artifact where you can pay 1, tap it, discard a card, and sacrifice the token in order to draw a card.
The werewolves have Transform with Daybound and Nightbound again. There's actually a lot of very good werewolves in this set. We knew they were going to be split between Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow. I do think there may have been some marketing misses because, and maybe I was also just under that impression.
Mm-hmm.
It felt very much that Innistrad Hunt or Midnight Hunt was really going to be werewolves and this was really going to be vampires.
Mm-hmm.
They both felt mixed, which is great.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it, but there was a lot of chatter about why are all the good werewolves in this set? And they're not all.
Sure.
Tovalar's not in the set, which is where your deck...
Or Arlen Cord, for that matter. It seems like the legendary creatures are actually focused around those particular themes. So we had all the legendary werewolves in the first one. Now we have all the legendary vampires in Vow. But since the non-legendary werewolves just ended up being really, really good.
Yeah, the one that gives hexproof to everything. I don't have the name offhand. It's really good. I know we moved away from hexproof. I'm hoping that that's because it's a mechanic I think that tribe needs.
Sure. Yeah, no, because
to not be targeted.
Yeah, you have to have your lords live.
Yeah.
We also have zombies with the returning mechanic from Dragons of Cartier with Exploit. So Exploit is an enter the battlefield trigger where you sacrifice a creature you control. It can even be the creature with Exploit itself in order to get an extra effect.
I do like that you said Dragons of Cartier.
Of Cartier. Well,
Dragons
cards,
of Cartier.
Cards tier.
It's the cards tier. Yes, Dragons of Tarkir. Long time ago, we saw you used to have a commander that was based on Exploit, but it wasn't really. It was mostly just the commander was mono black because you played Sidisi Undead Vizier,
yes,
which was Exploiter creature. You can go tutor for anything to your hand. It was demonic tutor, right?
It was mono black, demonic tutor, diabolic tutor, whatever.
We're not seeing it that crazy this time.
No.
Fun things, just your
little bit of
loses
life
2
gain,
life, you gain
draw.
2 life, some card draw, which is exactly what you want to be doing. Spirits are returning with Disturb, so again, you can cast them from your graveyard. And this time, instead of coming back as a creature that has flying and maybe an additional ability, they're coming back as auras, enchantments that are going to enchant a creature and give them the ability that that creature had on its front face. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, it's super cool.
I like it a lot. And since we're seeing some aura, I guess, matters themes here, this really works well in limited, but also works really well in commander decks that wanted more auras.
For sure.
And maybe were lacking on the number of creatures because they were playing them. They count as both. If I were to build an aura deck now, I feel like I would be playing all the disturbed creatures with these that I could.
Most likely.
So I can count them in both of my categories on Architect. Yeah,
I mean, it's more power to you, right? And then humans have a mechanic called training that's being brought out. And training is if a creature with training is attacking, with a creature that has more power than it, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. So this is kind of replacing Coven, because we had Coven in the previous Innistrad set. This is another way to get +1/+1 counters on it. Probably synergizes well with Coven too.
And this is like the mirror of the mechanic Mentor
from Guilds of Ravnica.
Mentor from Guilds of Ravnica. So this one, you get to put it on the creature
So you still put it on the smaller creature.
Still
either
put it on
way.
the smaller creature.
It's just whether the keyword's on the bigger creature or the smaller creature.
Or the smaller creature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to swing there. Let's take a look. We each picked 5 cards that we plan on actually putting in commander decks that we have in our suite of commander decks today. And the first card I selected was Reckless Impulse. So this is a sorcery for 1 and a red. It says exile the top 2 cards of your library until end of your next turn. You may play those cards.
How can this common sorcery be at the top of our list here, Andy?
I really need this card advantage. I don't mind that it's reckless. I know you made a comparison actually in our Discord, and you said,
Like,
do
light
you
up
not
the stage.
run light up the stage?
Mhm.
Because I was the minute I saw this, I said, any red deck that I'm playing, I'm running this. And you make a good point. The issue with light up the stage for me is the deck I'm talking about putting this in is Rionia Fire Dancer.
Oh, yeah.
So I need to be able to play a bunch of spells on my turn so I can make a bunch of creatures when I move to combat. Light up the stage is requiring either you do it in main phase 2 after attacking, or that you're running like burn spells. So a Torbrand deck, the red fell, is probably going to want both.
For sure.
But Rionia it can use both. It can use both. I don't use it.
Okay.
And then I thought to myself, why am I not running this anyway? That was just a good question. But I don't expect to add light up the stage. But Reckless Impulse, it's just so strong.
Yeah, I really like it. I think the 2 mana, like you said, 2 mana being less than 3 mana for light up the stage, I think just makes it better in a lot of ways. I'm playing this in spell slinging decks too, or planning on playing this in spell slinging decks that are going to try to reduce the cost of my instants and sorceries anyways. So hopefully for 1 red, exiling the top 2 cards is even better. Maybe copy it a few times.
I like it on 2, even if you just play it on turn 2,
Yep.
because if you were short a land, you might find one. And if you do find a land and a spell, you can play that land instead of the land that's in your hand, because it does say play, not cast.
That's right.
So this feels, it's not ramp per se, but it feels like mana fixing to me.
Sure.
That's
It's card advantage for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So that is easily hitting 2 or 3 of my decks.
Oh yeah. All right. My first card that you were very excited that made this list.
I was, because I didn't know if it was going to hit the list, because this doesn't do anything for me.
Right.
Any of my decks.
And it does something very special for one of my decks. This card is Nature's Embrace, which is an enchantment aura for 3 mana, 2 and a green, that says enchant creature or land. As long as the enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +2/+2. And as long as the enchanted permanent is a land, it has tap, add 2 mana of any one color. Now, when I first saw this, I did think, oh, is it like you put it on a Dryad Arbor so that it gets +2/+2 and can tap for 2 because it's both a land and a creature? But I have a Kodama and Arden land auras deck, and this particular card it nets 1 mana. It only costs 3 mana for the aura, which is perfect, fits the curve for the deck. And on top of it, I can always move it onto Arden and make Arden +2/+2, which is just really, really good for the deck.
Yeah, this card could be political for you too. If you did see somebody, at least in your Arden Kodama deck, if you see somebody who's light on lands, you could shift it to one of their lands so that they get an extra mana.
Mhm.
There's a game out there that on our YouTube channel, it might have been one of the last 2 games
Mhm.
where I got stuck on mana. And I had a cultivate in my hand, I believe.
Mhm.
If I could have just gotten to 3, I could have been back in the game, but I
Right.
kept missing land drops. You could have thrown me a bone.
Absolutely.
I'm
And
gonna
then
get right back in.
and find someone whose commander only has 19 power, so I can give it
To put it
+2/+2.
Put
Make
at
it 21.
21. My next card is probably one of the least liked of cards that were previewed because of what it does for Commander specifically. I
Sure.
understand what it does
Yep.
in Standard, but I'm talking about Wash Away. So it's an instant for 1 blue. It does have cleave, but it says counter target spell, and then in the brackets it says that wasn't cast from its owner's hand. So cleave, you can pay it for 1 blue. It just becomes a counter target spell, just counter spell. In Commander, the commanders are cast from the command zone. For 1 blue mana, you get to counter a commander.
Yeah.
So early game, it's great if you need to slow somebody down who's playing a low mana value commander, or one that's going to maybe mess up your game plan.
For sure.
Late game, it just becomes a counter spell. And I did not put this in the list when we talk about Noyandar and Shirei, because this does fit that list.
Yeah.
And I will be adding this to that deck. But I do want you all to know I will be countering your commanders, and I will be smiling about it.
Yeah, that's okay with me. I'm going to let it go to the graveyard, and then I'm going to try to reanimate it.
Yeah, but I feel like this card in standard, we're playing stuff from the graveyard.
Mhm.
Disturb is played from the graveyard. But we are seeing things even in I wouldn't say casual versus CEDH versus the high power, which is, I feel like we fall in the middle always here.
Yep.
But
Power 7.
you
always.
can, everything's just power 7.
Everything's
And
power
if it's a
7.
6, it's actually an 8.5. I saw a meme the other day and it was very funny. That you really get a lot of graveyard cards, especially Underworld Breach, which is being seen a lot in various power levels.
Mhm.
I've played it when I only had 3 cards in my or 4 cards, because I had to exile 3 so I could get just one of them back.
Right.
This can, for 1 blue mana.
Yeah.
I'll let you. How many cards are in your graveyard? 4? Okay, good. Yeah. Underworld Breach resolves.
You may.
Go for it. Cast a spell? Oh, wash away.
Yeah, sorry. 1
I'm
blue.
so sorry.
Oh, did you think it was a Dispel? It might have worked. A Dispel might have worked. I don't know. It depends what it was. I do like this card. I think there's a lot of discussion about this for its implications in... people are talking about this card for a CEDH implication. I don't really see it as a CEDH card. People aren't playing Tail's End in CEDH. I know that's 2 mana, but it hits a little bit more things. And in CEDH, you never want to cast a 3 mana counterspell unless you really, really have to, or you're being taxed for it or something. So I'm not convinced this is going to be seeing played in CEDH. That being said, still a good way to counter a commander. So my favorite board wipe that they printed in here, we may have mentioned it before. You may have mentioned it at the very beginning of the episode.
Yes, you can come to my party by invitation only.
That's right. By invitation only is a 5 mana white sorcery, 3 white that says choose a number between 0 and 13. Each player sacrifices that many creatures. I really like the fact that you get to choose the number after the spell resolves and after someone spites kills all of my creatures besides my commander. So I can then just say, all right, fine, we'll sacrifice 0. I want to keep my commander.
I didn't think about that, but I also, I have not seen a commander deck that is making 100 1/1s except for the Locust God.
Sure.
I haven't seen a commander deck make that many tokens. We do have Prava, and I don't know if it's Prava and Ikra Shadiki. But there's a few Prava decks in our Discord that do make a lot of tokens.
Yeah, I have an Abzan's tokens deck that can get to about 20 or some when I get there. Sidar Kondo and Nadir, Agent of the Dusk.
I think there's a Tevish Zot deck.
Definitely.
But there's the between 0 and 13 is going to hit. In almost every game that I play, it's you decide if anybody's going to keep any creatures.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing more than 13.
Definitely not. And it gets around indestructible because it's an edict and forces you to sacrifice. So it's really good for that too.
Yeah.
Which I enjoy. So bye-bye Zatalpa, because I'm just going to say 1 to your Zatalpa deck, and you're going to have to sacrifice that Zatalpa.
It feels very targeted to a player that we are very good friends with that plays Zatalpa.
That's because I've never beaten that Zatalpa deck before. This is the way I can do it. It only took a 5 mana sorcery.
The next card I have is Toxic Scorpion, and it doesn't feel like a major game changer, but I really like it because I play Finn the Fang Bear, and Finn is a deck that it's an infect deck that only cares about death touch creatures.
Right.
And it could use another creature to give death touch to the few creatures I am running that don't. So I have made quite a few changes to my Finn deck. I was running pretty much every death touch creature that I could find that was between 1 and 4 or 5 mana. And then I realized there are too many 1-drops that I have that if I don't get them on 1 and Finn on 2, it feels so bad drawing 4 1-drops in a row that aren't going to do anything. So I made some changes, and I see that, Sereth the Viper's Fang came out in Midnight Hunt. So there's still death touch synergies. We still have Finn in standard from Call Time.
Oh, yeah.
But I like this card because it gives another creature Death Touch. I have cards to give all my creatures Death Touch, Orin Frostfang, Bow of Nylea. But this can give like my Ronus the Indomitable Death Touch when I play it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's important enough that I'm going to add this. It's a 1/1 for 2, which feels bad. It has Death Touch and says whenever it enters the battlefield, target creature you control gains Death Touch till end of turn.
Yeah. No, I really like this for the Finn deck. I think 2 mana for a Death Touch creature. That's perfect. I mean, it's on curve with Finn, which is a little clunky.
It feels bad.
It's a little clunky, but you have a 2 mana commander. I mean,
it is. It'll be 6 eventually.
Yes, it will.
Or 8.
I did want to ask if you run infect creatures in there.
I do.
Okay.
I think I have Viridian Corruptor, and if I'm remembering it correct, I believe when it enters, it's a Reclamation Sage on an infect creature.
Yep. Oh yeah.
So I do run some infect creatures. It still works with a theme.
That's right. You get rid of Finn, you're still getting infected. Okay. Next card is absolutely fantastic for an old deck that I had. But it's going to be going in some new hotnesses too. And I know you like this card. It is a rare. It is a sorcery. It is red. It is called Change of Fortune. For 3 and a red, you get to discard your hand, then draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn.
I'm sad you didn't continue with saying what it was because I thought you were going to say it is 3 words. It is. First word is.
First. Oh, you'll play some charades. But no, yeah. Change of Fortune is going to be amazing in your Rakdos Madness decks where you're just discarding a bunch of cards. In your Is It Riel deck where you're literally discarding a bunch of cards to draw more cards. You know, the first time you would discard, you draw that many that you discarded for a Riel. We know that there's a brand new legendary creature out there that cares about drawing a bunch of cards. And you get to exile double the amount. So, you know, you follow a Change of Fortune immediately after a Wheel of Fortune, you're going to be drawing 14 cards. And this is only drawing for yourself. So you're not wheeling the entire board, giving everyone else a significant board state. Or maybe you're just playing a Rakdos. Everyone's going to discard their hands. I'm going to throw a Mind Slicer down, sacrifice it. Everyone has to discard their things. And I sacrifice Mind Slicer with Change of Fortune on the stack. So I get a new hand. Nobody else does.
What a play.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you're in that game.
I don't know what a Mind Slicer, so it's not going to be me.
But this is going to go in the Locust God, and I run Riel in the Locust God. So it is a wheels deck.
Mm-hmm.
So I am discarding a lot. In some cases, I have wheeled into a windfall. So I have actually discarded potentially 14 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then playing this will let me draw so many cards.
Oh yeah.
This is exactly what I want to be doing in the Locust God. And I'm glad you picked this because this works in not even just wheel decks. Sometimes you just Faithless Looting. Draw 2, discard 2, and then play this and
discard your hand and draw 9. If you had a hand of 7, absolutely. That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I like it in Anji Falconwrath the most. Anji Falconwrath wheels deck where you're going to be discarding, you don't even have to be wheeling, but just discarding all of your madness cards, eventually filtering into a Change of Fortune, cast it. Now you have a hand of 30, so many more cards with madness to discard. I think this is an absolute bomb in an Anji Falconwrath deck.
You know what else I would welcome into my decks?
What would you welcome into your deck, Andy?
Welcoming Vampire is welcome into my decks.
Okay.
So Welcoming Vampire is a 2/3 vampire for 2 and a white, flying. Whenever one or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a card, and I know I've talked about it on the show, Mentor of the Meek, that I actually cut out of my Sigarda Heron's Grace commander deck. So Mentor of the Meek costs 3 mana as well. It's a 2/2. It doesn't have flying, and says whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card. So it's not limited to once per turn.
Mm-hmm.
It has a smaller toughness, doesn't have flying. The problem was Mentor of the Meek always required that I have an additional mana. So my creature with power 2 costs 1 more. If you think about it that way, your 3-drop just costs 4 now. But in most cases, I didn't have 4. I only had 3.
Right.
So I cut it because I never, ever drew off of Mentor of the Meek.
Yeah.
Even in a deck that's making 5 or 6 1/1s every game.
Well, it costs 2 mana to make the 1/1, right? And you'd rather make the 1/1 than draw a card.
Right. So Welcoming Vampire, though, even though it's only 1 time each turn,
Mm-hmm.
I will probably draw an insurmountable number of cards once I add this to my decks just over a ton of games compared to, I honestly, if I had to even guess, I think it was less than 10 times that I ever got to trigger Mentor of the Meek.
Yeah.
I figure Welcoming Vampire is going to trigger every single game that I play Welcoming Vampire.
I think Welcoming Vampire's best friend is going to be reprinted in our Commander Mono Black set in January, Ophiomancer,
Yeah.
who will make a snake at every person's upkeep and draw you a card at every person's upkeep, as long as you don't control any snakes. So I really like Welcoming Vampire too. I'm probably going to be throwing it in Tokens deck, even if it doesn't trigger 50 times a turn. Trigger once a turn. Oh, card draw. You got to love it. This next legendary creature I want to talk about is not a creature that I'm interested in building a commander deck around, but is it getting thrown into the 99? This is a Gerolf Visionary Stitcher. For 3 mana, 2 and a blue, you get a legendary creature, Human Wizard. It has 1 power, 4 toughness, and this first text is literally the best thing for my zombies you control have flying. If it only had that text, this card would be in the deck. But additionally, you can pay 1 blue, tap, and sacrifice another non-token creature to create an XX blue zombie creature token, where X is that sacrificed creature's toughness. Now, there are some creatures out there like Tormod or something that do have, or zombies that have greater power than toughness, but for a majority of the zombies out there, their toughness is either equal to their power or their toughness is greater than their power. I like Grey Merchant of Asphodel is a really good example of this. It's a 2 power, 4 toughness. You can sacrifice it to your Gerolf to get a 4/4 token and then reanimate it, and your zombies have flying. I just think this is an amazing card for any zombie deck, including blue. Which is, you got your Dimir zombies or your Esper zombies. I don't know if there's blue-white zombies or anything like that. You could do mono blue zombies.
You can play changelings. Everything can
That's
be
true.
zombies.
And technically, it does say sacrifice another non-token creature. It doesn't require you to sacrifice a zombie to make a zombie, which I guess thematically you shouldn't be able to sacrifice zombies to make zombies, but maybe you can. I guess Stitchers stitch zombies together.
You take 2 arms off and you make 2 1-armed zombies.
Oh.
They're going to come at you just as fast as the 2-armed zombie.
Yeah, they're still armed. Just not
armed and ready.
Yes, there's just... What if they had arms coming out of their mouth? Would you consider them armed to the teeth?
Is that a phrase that people say?
Armed to the teeth? Yeah.
What does it mean?
like they have so much that it goes all the way up to their teeth.
To their teeth?
Yeah, that's how armed they are. I think it refers more to armor rather than like weapons. But
I have not. This is the second card. So we actually just got a card in the Will Help Precon that says other zombies you control have flying. So that was Hordewing Scab, a 3/3 flying zombie for 4 and a blue. I put together Will Help. So when I saw Gerolf, I was excited. They both belong in these decks.
For sure.
The evasion with zombies is needed.
It's so good when it happens.
Really
no one expects the flying zombie horde.
No one expects them. I do feel bad for Gerolf though. A 1/4 with Gisa gets everything. He and his sister are not. I don't think Gisa and Gerolf are...
I guess Giza cares about making as many zombies as possible, and Gerolf's about making the best zombie possible. So I think they just have different goals and aspirations, which is why you don't see him on the same card anymore.
No, I get it, but Gisa's a 4/4. Her brother is so weak.
Well, it's because he's a nerd sitting in his laboratory all day.
She's bringing the zombies back, and
she's got a shovel. She's digging them out herself.
She does. Did you see though the zombie he makes? The art, the flavor text is, "Do you like it, sister? Its dreadful visage was inspired by your own."
I like it.
Yeah. So he's making.
This is what you look like, is what he's this right. This is what you look like.
I did it. Okay, I did it. I am also excited to add Cemetery Protector to my Sigarda deck. So I'm finding, and I said this last set, that it is becoming more and more difficult to edit this green-white's human deck.
Oh yeah.
We have new cards that came out in the Coven Precon, which Kyler was very good. The actual new Sigarda, the Intrepid Visionary, the one from Midnight Hunt. I can't. Intrepid something.
Yep.
They're all very good, and some of them just came out so recently. I haven't actually cast them yet.
Right.
But Cemetery Protector is another very strong human. Is a 3/4 human soldier for 2 white with flash. It says when it enters the battlefield, exile a card from a graveyard.
That's good on a flash creature.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love these protectors. So this is part of an actual cycle. So there's a protector in each color. This is just the white one. And it says whenever you play a land or cast a spell, if it shares a card type with the exiled card, create a 1/1 white human creature token.
Oh yeah.
That's going to draw me a card with my welcoming
Vampire.
Welcoming Vampire.
Yeah.
And it would have with my Mentor the Meek if I paid for it.
Yeah,
But I'm already running so many white human creature tokens. It's a 3/4. Flash. I'm going to get you with this.
Well, and if you use it and you don't have like a really good card to go after or something in someone's graveyard that they're trying to target with a reanimation, you just hit a land, you play your Windswept Heath that I assume you play in that deck the one time, and now you get 2 1/1s for that because it's landfall. Since
it actually already just says when you play a land or cast a spell. Right. But so the cracking it doesn't count. You only play a land one time.
Oh, it's not enter the battlefield.
It's not ETB.
Gotcha.
So you want to exile an actual card type.
Sure.
Probably not a land.
Probably creature. In
my deck, I'd want creature. If not, maybe sorcery.
Yeah.
I've got a few instances, but it's a creature-based deck that already has some flash creatures, so I want to wait to hit a creature. This is coming down on 4. This is probably going to be played later game for me.
Yeah.
Because I need something to be gone for it to exile.
The flash humans seem so good, and the other one that I can think of off the top of my head is Selfless Squire. It's just those flash humans just to seem really good for late game top ends for the humans deck. Awesome that we see another one. I have this last card here on our list, and it might seem underwhelming at its face value, but I think this thing is really, really, really good. Voldarian Epicure. For 1 red, you get a 1/1 vampire that says when Voldarian Epicure enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you create a blood token. So for 1 mana, you get a 1/1 that deals up to 3 damage, and you get an artifact. I think is already really, really good. It's an enter the battlefield effect, so I'm actually planning on using this in my Jeskai enter the battlefield. It's blink/flicker. It uses both, so I don't really call it either. There's possible ways to have this creature just blink infinitely to do, all the damage to the opponents. I think in a Torbrand deck, you're doing lightning bolts to everybody. In a Neheb deck, you're going to be having your second main phase with 3 red by only casting for 1 red. I just really like this card, and if you have ways to abuse the artifact creation, it can even be better if you're playing a Clat Clan Ironworks or something in order to get more colorless mana. I just think this is a fantastic 1-drop, and it's a common.
So I was very low on blood tokens. I personally didn't see where I would benefit from them, but I took apart an Arden and Togo deck. So it was a deck that was simply trying to put out as many artifacts as I could. Didn't matter if it was blood or artifact or a treasure or a rock or an equipment. And I see the value in running this in a deck that just wants any generic artifact.
Yeah.
A Togo deck really might actually want this, but I agree. I don't see a home for this in my decks though.
I additionally see a drawback. When we talk about mass token creation for artifacts, you're looking at clues, food, and treasures. And that's because we just got this guy in Modern Horizons 2 called Academy Manufactor, that if you produce 1, you produce the other 2. Blood tokens are not included in that, and Academy Manufactor has become a staple in a lot of these token decks. And because of that, it definitely has to be its own thing. Maybe you can build around this blood token. It does only cost 1 in order for you to filter a card from your hand versus 2 for a clue, but that's just a straight up card draw. Maybe you want it in a Madness deck or a discard deck. It's in the right color for that. It's in red, so hopefully you can make use of it.
I like the idea of it being in Torbrand where you lightning bolt each opponent on ETB. It just, unless they don't have something else,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's ever going to get in.
It might not. But in a Torbrand deck, it's still going to do 3 damage to that blocking creature. So you got that going for you a little bit.
That is true. So now we've gone through these cards. We always like to talk about our favorite pet decks. And so for mine, that is Noyandar Royal Shaper. Noyandar, again, is a 4/4 Merfolk ally for 3 a white and a blue. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you may put 3+1/+1 counters on target land you control. If you do, it becomes a 0/0 elemental with haste that's still a land. So the whole deck is based around casting instants and sorceries, disrupting my opponent's plans. It does run quite a few counter spells because I can't allow a board wipe to happen, because then not only do I lose my creatures, I also lose my lands.
Yeah, those are good instants.
They are very good instants. And this deck is giving me the Wash Away, which is very strong.
Oh, yeah.
But the more important card here, which I am going to give myself a win, because we did have Engulf the Shore referenced when we were talking about potential speculation.
Oh, yeah.
And I was right. It was from Innistrad. Not the actual set, but the plane in general. We have Consuming Tide, which is very similar. So a sorcery for 2 blue. Each player chooses a non-land permanent they control. Return all non-land permanents not chosen this way to their owner's hands. Then you draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in their hand than you.
Mm-hmm.
So in my deck, I am animating the creatures. It does say non-land. So if I have, let's say, 2 lands, I usually only have 1. But if my main creature is a land, I will choose Noyandar. Maybe I have a rock or 2 out, and I'll return those. But the majority of my cards are spells. So I almost always have less cards in my hand than my opponents. So when this resolves, I'm going to keep my large creature. It's going to get bigger. My opponents are going to have more cards in their hand than me. And I could potentially, this could say, pay 4, bounce problems that you can't deal with, put 3 counters on a creature, and draw 3 cards.
Oh, yeah.
This is exactly what I need.
Yeah, it was made for Noyandar.
This is made for Noyandar. I'm already running cards like they're just mass bounce. That's the whole deck.
Sure.
It's like mass bounce and then some counter spells. So the game's go on for a lot longer than some people I think would like.
Sure.
But Consuming Tide, it's going in.
It kind of reminds me of that Teferi's board wipe, where you get to bounce 1 card to your hand and then destroy all other creatures on the board. But this is not specific to creatures, and it's bouncing all non-land permanents. So you got your 4 mana sorcery speed Cyclonic Rift in a Noyandar deck. Which is cool. All right, so the She-Ray deck, that is my pet deck, did get potentially 9 cards in this set, but really only 1, and I'll explain why. If you're not familiar with She-Ray is She-Ray, Shizo's Caretaker, is a 5 mana legendary creature spirit with 2 power and 2 toughness, 4 and a black. This is whenever a creature with power 1 or less is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step if She-Ray, Shizo's Caretaker is still on the battlefield. The main takeaway from that is we're looking for mono black creatures with 1 or less power. And again, there's 12 of these, 12 creatures from the set that actually fit into it. That being said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these creatures transform into creatures that no longer have 0 or 1 power. They have more power than that. Outside of that, the effects that the other creatures give aren't that great, which is when we're left with the last creature, Gluttonous Guest. Gluttonous Guest is a 3 mana, 1/4 vampire, 2 and a black. This is when Gluttonous Guest enters the battlefield, create a blood token. And whenever you sacrifice a blood token, you gain 1 life. So I do have ways to sacrifice artifacts in this deck. But at the same time, I could just sacrifice the blood token to get a little bit of card draw. Having cards in my graveyard in She-Ray isn't a particularly bad thing. And I'm going to gain life doing it, offsetting a lot of the card draw that I have that requires me to lose life in order to draw cards. So Gluttonous Guest, 3 mana is a little bit high on the curve for She-Ray. When I'm looking to upgrade She-Ray, I'm looking to get 2 mana and 1 mana creatures back in. But this card probably is going to see play.
Do you run much Reanimate aside from the She-Ray itself?
Yes. A lot of it is creatures that say either when they enter the battlefield or die, you can return cards to your hand. But I also play Victimize because it's also a pseudo sack outlet that can return creatures for me.
Yeah, I like this a lot. I didn't even think about having blood tokens in your Shirei deck.
Yeah, I mean, anything that I coincidentally get with my creatures is fantastic to me, but I'm not going to build it around the blood tokens.
No, but it does allow you to discard a card that you might have a Victimize in hand to bring back and not have to cast. I know that your curve is not super high on that.
Right.
You keep is Shirei the top?
Shirei is equal to the top. Yes.
So five mana.
Yeah, nothing more than 5 mana in the deck.
Wow.
And Victimize being a 3-mana reanimation spell that actually brings 2 creatures back makes it super worthwhile. I know the argument of, oh, you have a low mana curve, why not just cast them instead of trying to cheat them out? Well, if I can cheat 2 out at the same time, then it becomes worth it.
Right. All right. Well, we are at the section where we want to talk about a new commander deck we would build with a new legendary creature from this set. And I don't need another Izzet deck.
Oh, but don't you?
But if I did need one, which I may need one, at least to play around with, is Aerith Tormented Prophet, which is a 2/4 human wizard, 1 blue and a red to cast. It says if you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You may play those cards this turn.
Yeah. So no more card draw.
No more card draw, but major card advantage.
Huge.
So Brainstorm changes from draw 3 cards to exile 6 cards. You'd have to put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order, but now you have access to 6 cards.
Yeah.
A Wheel of Fortune, or a Wheel of Misfortune, I guess, even, is discard your hand, exile the top 14 cards of your library. This feels nutty. It feels like this feels a little combo-y for me. So I know if I built it, this would definitely be on the higher power scale just immediately.
Sure.
Could shift maybe the Locust God into this, and it would have probably more of the Riel feel.
Mm-hmm.
But you're probably looking at winning off of something like a Thassa's Oracle or a Labman or Jace Wielder of Mysteries. It just seems that's where my mind went immediately.
Sure.
Although there's cards that, at least a card from Midnight Hunt, where you create an XX creature with power and toughness equal to the number of instant sorceries in your graveyard and an exile.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of these cards are probably going to go to exile. So if there's things that want that, I haven't done a ton of looking into it yet because I don't need another Izzet deck.
Sure.
But this card seems really fun. And you might see it across the table from you soon.
Yeah. I remember seeing Crackling Drake in Standard for so long. It was a star 4 dragon that got +1/+0 for every card that was in your graveyard, or instant sorcery in your graveyard or exile. So yeah, there's probably tons of cards in here. Maybe it fits really well with Riel because you're going to still discard, and then instead of drawing, you're going to exile everything. It is important to note, and I made this mistake too, you're going to have to somehow sacrifice your commander if you plan to win with Jace Wielder of Mysteries or Laboratory Maniac.
Oh, because you have to actually draw.
But Thassa's Oracle, you don't.
Interesting.
Yes. So
hadn't even gotten that far yet.
I already made that mistake and got corrected is my problem. So the deck that I want to make, in fact, I've already put the list together and I'm excited to actually put it together. I don't know if anyone's particularly excited about this card, but that's Edgar Charmed Groom. So Edgar is a 4-mana vampire noble for 2, a white and a black. You get a 4/4 that says other vampires you control get +1/+1. And when Edgar Charmed Groom dies, return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control as Edgar Markov's coffin.
His bed.
Yes, it is his bed. Well, he sleeps there eternally, it seems.
Yeah.
It's a legendary artifact that says at the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 white and black vampire creature token with lifelink and put a bloodline counter on Edgar Markov's coffin. Then, if there are 3 or more bloodline counters on it, remove those counters and transform it. So this particular deck is vampire themed. Because of the Lord effect that Edgar has to give all of your other vampires +1/+1, but it has an additional theme of +1/+1 counters, because on the backside of Edgar with the coffin, I'm going to try to exploit that to get, and not literally exploit the keyword, I am trying to exploit those counters by proliferating in order to get Edgar back sooner. So hopefully I'll never have to recast my commander after I cast him once. There are 14 cards in the Orzhov colors that can proliferate for me. at least one of them actually has infect on that. That's coincidental. It's not part of the deck. But I'm also, because of that, playing some other fun cards that I can proliferate with. I'm playing 7 or 8 different Soren Markovs in here, Planeswalkers, along with one Kaya. I'm playing Magistrate's Scepter, which is an extra turn cards with charge counters on there. But I also just get to coincidentally get to play cards like Sword of Truth and Justice, because having pro white, pro blue is fantastic. And I get to proliferate stuff. I get to play Yawgmoth Thran Physician because he cares about proliferating stuff. Everflowing Chalice is a fantastic card. You can just put charge counters on and then it becomes a mana rock for you. That's, tapping for 2, 3, 4 mana in the end. Contagion Clasp and Contagion Engine. I'm going to be able to pretty much keep Edgar out on the battlefield. You do have to get the initial counter on it at your upkeep, but as soon as it has that initial counter, the next upkeep I have, Edgar will be back.
Yeah, so the goal is to always flip off of the coffin within one turn cycle. So
exactly.
You have Edgar on your turn.
Yes.
To give other vampires +1/+1.
Yes. Now,
do we care about these bat? Oh, they're black vampires. Yeah, that you're making.
Exactly.
You're not making bats.
I do play like 6 or 7 board wipes in the deck because it's going to be really good. Because I'm going to be able to get my commander back easily. My opponents won't. I'll be able to make tokens at the same time. I'm excited to make the deck. It might be underwhelming. It's going to be my first ever Orzhov deck, and I'm going to put it together.
All right. I'm excited to see that. And that's it for this week's episode. You can find me on Twitter at Andy Flory.
And you can find me on Twitter at WormCoilEngine. And of course, we want to give a special thanks to Ryan Nichols, our producer and editor. Thank you so much for everything that you do. We appreciate you a lot. And Chris Wolf, who handles all of our graphic design. Thank you for everything that you do. We appreciate you a lot. And to all of you who are listening out there, we appreciate you most of all. And we'll listen. You'll listen to us.
We'll listen to you next week too, though.
Yeah, we'll always listen to you in the Discord when you add us, and you can listen to us next week.
And for all the suggestions you sent in.
Yeah, thanks.
We listen to each other.
Yes, we listen to you. You listen to us. It's a mutual listening.
It's a listening thing.
It's the listening.
Bye.
Bye.
I was like, oh wait, we need to actually say bye.